Marcus, and welcome to Abstract Essay, where ideas take shape, thoughts find depth, and every conversation explores the art of thinking beyond the obvious. And today I have my special guest, founder and CEO of Guiding Ascent Career Coaching, no other than Mr. Curtis Butler.
Hello.
Welcome, Mr. Curtis on Abstract Essay. And can you please introduce more about yourself?
Sure thing, and very nice to see you again. So,
Yes.
after 30 years in finance, after a very long career, I decided to take what I was doing every single day, which is mentoring young people, helping advise them on their career paths, and turn that into my own company and coach these people every single day. And I'm so glad I did. I absolutely love my job.
Yes. We salute you for doing that, Mr. Curtis, empowering our generation to come. And today let's talk about what students can do to beat the job search odds. And what makes today's job market particularly challenging for students and new grads?
Those are great questions. So, I'll start with what students can do to make things easier to find more success. The most important thing they can do by far, actually, and the primary obstacle that I see and have seen in the hundreds of conversations I've had over the past year with parents and students is to believe in themselves and to believe that the outcome will be positive, that they will make it, that they will succeed and find that job, find that right career path for themselves. Because without that self belief, nothing really positive can happen. Can you imagine going into an interview just doubting yourself, full of anxiety and desperation? That does not result in a strong interview and does not result in job offers. So, the most important thing anyone can do is say, I believe in what I have to offer. I believe I have a lot to share, and I can share that. I can tell my story in a way that is compelling. And I believe something will work out in my favor. It doesn't matter if I have 3 interviews, 10 interviews, or 50 interviews, it's going to work for me. And that kind of confidence comes through in an interview, whether it's across the screen or in person. So that's the most important thing I think anyone can do. And in all of my talks, I talk a lot about confidence. The second thing you can do is think about preparation. The single best formula to resolve fear and anxiety is preparation. So start early. Think about your career path on the early side. When you get to university, when you get to college, don't wait and think, well, what pieces should I be putting into place? Should I start building my network? Yes. Start getting to know more and more people, expand your network through your families and friends and their friends, and then start exploring, following organizations and people that interest you. LinkedIn is a great place to do that and to start growing that network and growing and having more and more conversations that can inform you about the direction you really want to take. So those are two really, really important things that anyone can do, whether they're just starting out or making a mid-career change. And then to your question about why is this job market so hard? There's so many factors that play in, but I'm reading articles every single day that it's AI that's ruining the job market for new grads. That's not really true yet. Obviously, there's some roles that can easily be filled by the equivalent of ChatGPT, but that's not generally the case. The biggest challenge right now is simply what companies are looking for in their new grads is are skills that are hard to find. They're looking for communication and professionalism. And in this era, communication is not something that our young people have really developed all that well. And it's not their fault, right? We gave them the smartphones. It's not their fault. So we can help them with these soft skills, the skills that really help prepare them for the working world, for the professional world. The other piece is Since everything is done online today, when there's a new job posting, for example, all the people who want to go into finance, those internships and jobs are opening up in the next month or so, many of those. Well, everyone's getting that notification at the same time. So just taking the example of the most prestigious investment banks in the US, companies like Goldman Sachs and JP Morgan and Morgan Stanley, they're getting hundreds of thousands of applicants for their internships. So the acceptance rate is lower than it is for Harvard University. So that's just an example of in the internet age when everyone sees the same postings online and we're all getting the same email notifications, the number of applicants for any job has just exploded. So it's not so easy anymore to use the DIY method, the do it yourself method to get a job. And that's showing up in the statistics about graduate outcomes, how many 50% of college graduates are taking jobs that don't require their degree. So it's just really challenging because there's so much competition and many of the skills that the companies are looking for are just not firmly established or unfortunately taught in schools today.
Yes, indeed. I believe that all my podcasts will empower people all over the world for sure. And Mr. What industries are currently offering the best opportunities for entry level candidates?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think the ones that are showing the highest uh, availability, the most consistent job postings are things like healthcare. So because of demographics, there's always, it seems, a nursing shortage. Education, there's definitely a teacher shortage. COVID did a lot of damage to both of those industries. There's so much burnout from teachers and nurses, um, physicians assistants, even doctors. So much burnout during COVID. There's a pretty sizable shortage, at least in this country, of qualified nurses and teachers, for example. So those are pretty rock solid professions where the demand for new grads is still very, very consistent. On the other hand, it's very volatile in industries like I mentioned, like in banking and finance, which are heavily dependent on what's happening out there in the markets or in policy. There's a lot of uncertainty about policy, about what's happening in Washington, for example. Large corporations tend to pull back. So one of the best things that could happen to the job market is just less uncertainty about domestic policy, about economic policy. Then companies would feel more comfortable committing to training young people. So hopefully that will come. Not sure of the timeline, but in across the board and in many industries, it's just about the uncertainty, which is causing people to hold back. And some corporations, I would say many corporations are trying to figure out where is the place for AI in my mix? Which roles which roles do I just really don't want to consider it because I need that creativity and I need real people? And which roles, you know what? Let's focus our AI attention on certain roles. For example, um, people in many industries, consulting and banking and finance, understand what's called the RFP process, right? The request for proposals. So when they're bidding for work, they go out to all the companies who might want to do that work and they say, send us, fill out this RFP, tell us what you propose. And it's a lot of work. And large companies have to bid for this business through RFPs all the time. And historically, they've had very large teams of people writing these proposals. Well, now AI can do that for you. You just feed it your best old proposals, and now it can adapt the old proposals to the new information and write you a brand new RFP. That used to be a team of a half a dozen people. Now you just probably need one person to review all that work. So that's a very clear example. And that's not a role I would have encouraged people to go into. It's very tedious and repetitive. So let AI have that one. Right.
Yes.
We'll keep the more creative ones with real career possibilities.
Mr. Curtis, how have employer expectations changed since the pre-pandemic times?
Yeah, again, a great question. I think what and what companies are saying, and there are annual surveys every year. And last year's annual survey said very, very clearly the most important skills that companies are looking for in their new graduates are number one, communication. Your ability to tell a story, your ability to tell your own story, your ability to communicate your ideas to others. Number two, right up behind it, is professionalism. Do you act like a kid? Do you speak like a kid? Or do you speak like an adult who's ready for the professional world? And they're these are incredibly important to the companies, but they're not finding it in most of their candidates. So that's why we as parents, myself as a coach, we have a responsibility to help lift up this generation when it comes to these really important soft skills, right? In school, whether you're in a technical major or liberal arts major, you learn a lot that can boost your technical skills, right? Boost your problem solving skills that are useful in the workplace. But not so much is happening on the interpersonal skills, what someone introduced to me as the relational skills, or what we used to call soft skills. So that's a huge part of how we can help, particularly younger generations, step away from their phones and learn how to engage in a professional way. I often say that your technical skills and your resume can get you an interview, but they will not get you a job. What gets you a job is your ability to come across professionally in that interview. And they're two very different skills. So that's one of the things I focus a lot on in my own coaching is getting people prepared to stand out when it comes to their communication and professionalism in an interview.
Mr. Curtis, let's talk about the proactive preparation strategies. What are the three most valuable skills students should develop before graduating?
Great question. So getting back to that topic of interviewing, what do you need to be able to do in an interview? What's the most common, Dan, you know this, what's the most common start of any interview? 80% of the interviews start the same way. Tell me about yourself.
Yes.
And you'd be surprised how few people actually know how to tell their own story. So that's something everyone should practice. Everyone, whether you're a high schooler, college student, recent graduate, or mid career professional, you need to be able to tell your story and encapsulate it in less than a minute. Don't tell me this is what I do right now. This is my job. No, that's not you. That's your job. Tell me about you. Where do you come from? What do you stand for? What has your career been like? What have you learned? What kind of person am I getting if I hire you? And why are you the right person for me to hire in the first place? So when I encourage people to work on that story, it starts with I grew up here with this kind of family, and these were the important things: education and athletics in my family, and this is what happened to me. I got into college and pursued these things, and then I went into industry, and these are all the things that I've done and why. And now I've reached this point where my next move is exactly what we're talking about today. This is the role that I want. You're the company I want to work for these reasons, and I believe I can make a huge positive contribution to your team. So you take the village or town or city you grew up in all the way to the interview in front of you in less than a minute, and the interviewer really gets a good sense of who they're talking to. And I talk to friends who are senior recruiters, and they tell me all the time, Kurt, please tell your students they need to that we hire people and they need to come across as real people. We don't hire resumes. You're going to have 5 people as finalists in those interviews. Which one are we going to choose? Because they all made it to the interview because their resumes are good enough. What separates them at the end is that ability to connect and for me to see them on my team. So that's what everyone can practice. Tell your own story. Be self aware when they ask you about your greatest strengths and your greatest weaknesses or failures that you've had or conflicts that you've had. Everyone needs to be prepared to talk about themselves in an honest way and pivot to what they learned from it. So that is a huge part of the general preparation that people can do, and it's what I spend a lot of time on with interview coaching. And the last piece, and it's kind of the most important piece, regardless, you want to build all those skills so that you're prepared for any interview, any conversation. But the really big picture question for yourself is, who are you? What do you want to do? Not what you think you want to do, or your classmates or colleagues are doing, your parents think you should do. Actually, where is your natural inclination? What is your natural passion? And how does that dovetail with your talents and skills? And it's that meeting place, that nexus of your talent, skills, and your passion, which is really where you're going to be most successful. Passion is not enough, right? I could say to you, I love basketball, so I'm going to play in the NBA. No, I'm not. So that it's that combination that's necessary, but everyone needs to do that thinking for themselves, and don't let someone else tell you where you're headed. You got to figure it out for yourself.
Yes, indeed. Figure it out, people, and share to the world. Mr. Curtis, how can students identify and articulate their unique value proposition to employers?
Great question. So that gets right back to, you really have to take the time to evaluate yourself, to basically step back and say, what makes me special? And you know who can be really helpful with this is your family and your closest friends. It's a great exercise to say, mom and dad, brother and sister, or best friends, can you write down the three things that stand out to you about me? What makes me extra special in your mind? What do I do better than most of the other people you know? And if you were to identify weaknesses too, go ahead and do that. But the real focus to your question is, why me? Why should you hire me? For these reasons. These are my superpowers. This is what everyone says about me. I think that's really, really helpful. And sometimes it's hard for us to, especially any kind of modesty or humility, it's hard for us to recognize our own superpowers. But other people can help us do that. So I think that's a really great exercise. And it's about putting trust and asking that small favor of the people who care about you. Tell me why I'm special so I can internalize that and then communicate it.
Empowering answer. Mr. Curtis. Empowering answer indeed. Application mastery. What's the most common resume mistake you see from students that hurts their chances?
Ooh, that's a good one. I would say I was just talking about this with someone who may join my coaching today. One of the big consultants did a huge study of resumes in the hiring process. And their conclusion was, after hundreds of thousands, if not millions of iterations, but the conclusion was that the the average hiring team, whether it's HR, talent acquisition, whoever, spends less than 10 seconds on each resume. And this was before there were thousands of applications. Now it's that number is probably falling. So what does that mean? That means your story needs to be clear on your resume. Your resume is not, I repeat, not just to be an accounting of everything you've done. There has to be a theme, there has to be a story, and don't bury the story. For example, I work with a number of student athletes who are university, Division One in the US, really big student athletes. And they'll have their college, their university at the top, and then they'll have their athletics at the bottom. And I say, look, we read from top to bottom. No one's going to see that. So if you're a university athlete, if you're a student athlete, scholar athlete, you have two full-time jobs. I want to see that all at once. So if you're at, Harvard University, and you're an athlete, you're in a sport, I want to see that right up there with your college. Everything that makes that whole university experience, I want all together. I don't want to have, I'm a marketing major at so and so university on top, and then I do all these other amazing things at that university at the bottom. put them all together at the very top of the resume. It makes a huge difference.
Definitely makes that big difference, people. Very huge. And what's your formula for crafting a cover letter that actually gets read?
Oh, great. So I have a very specific philosophy on cover letters, and people who work with me get cover letter templates. And it's kind of cool. We use AI tools to help speed up the process of taking our templates and revising them for different roles. But the key for cover letters is just be direct and concise. So my method for cover letters is no more than four short paragraphs, usually three. It's about being very clear. Why are you writing to me? I'm writing to you because I'm interested in this job and I believe I can add value to your team. Paragraph two, prove it. Tell me where your skills are. Tell me what you've done that should lead me to believe you can do this job right away. And then the last part is with humility saying, I would be so honored to work for your firm and I welcome the opportunity to discuss the open role with your team. But concise, direct. Most cover letters that I see are far too long and far too wordy. And by the way, it is very easy to spot when AI, ChatGPT, for example, has written your cover letter. It's far they love threes, three reasons for everything, and it's too much text, it's too much verbiage, and it stands out. It's very obvious at this stage. In 2 years, it might not be obvious, but it's still obvious today. So make sure that if you are using AI, which I encourage to help people organize and to write a draft, if you're using AI, make sure you are the final editor and that you put your personal touch on top of anything that you're sending out. But the most important lesson for most people, this is where I see the biggest mistake, make sure it's short. Because if somebody has to read 50 of these and they see a really dense cover letter with 6 paragraphs, there's a good chance they're just going to set it aside and not read it at all. And we don't want that to happen.
Definitely. And Mr. Curtis, how can students build meaningful relationships with the alumni in their field?
I got to tell you, Timmy, you asked the best question.
Thank you.
The key is you can get the LinkedIn is really important in industry today, and particularly in certain sectors, but it's so important. You can get your own LinkedIn account when you're 17. And if not, if before that, your parents can help you set it up. But the
Yes.
key is just to start growing your network from one to something bigger every month. And how do you do that? Well, when you set up the account, you just now reach out, you send connection requests to all the people you know. If you're in school, to your classmates, if they have accounts. Beyond that, to your family and your family friends. All of your parents' friends who know you will always say accept. And then start, to your point about alumni, start reaching out, particularly in the field you're interested in. Number one, start following. If you want to go into if you want to go into the law legal profession, or you want to go into my case into finance, start following the institutions, organizations, companies that you might want to work for. And when you're following them, you start to see what they're posting, and then start following thought leaders in those areas, whether strategists in finance or people who go on the speaking circuit in the legal profession or in medicine research. Start following and following and following, and then start reacting to and commenting on what you see, so you're getting in the flow. And when you find alumni, let's say you see a job opportunity at a particular company, on LinkedIn it will tell you 4 alumni work here. Now you reach out to those alumni to make a connection on LinkedIn. You don't send it without a note, because if I don't know you, I don't want to get that message. Who's this person who wants to connect with me? So you send a note every time. I just graduated from so and so school that you went to, and I saw your profile. I thought you'd be really helpful giving me some advice on how to enter this industry if you had 10 minutes for a call. Something really short and really easy. And the more of those calls, to your point, the more of those calls that you have, the more you can build those relationships. And it's not transactional. You don't set up one of those calls to ask for a job. That's cynical, that's short term. That you want to build bridges and build relationships that will pay off down the road. And even on that first call, let's say you applied for a job at a big company, you say, "Thank you so much for the 15 minutes. I learned so much. I really appreciate the time. And by the way, before we go, I'm sure you can appreciate how helpful it would be if you told HR that this conversation took place." And that's another way of saying, "Can you help push my resume forward so I can get an interview?" And if you
Awesome.
did your job on that 10-minute call and they like you and want to support you, they'll do that. That's the trick. No one gets a job. This is really the most important message on this. No one gets a job just by applying anymore. You have to use networking to get your resume forward and to get that interview.
Networking is the key, people. And Mr. Curtis, what's your advice for turning informational interviews into job opportunities?
That's exactly what I was just talking about. Informational interviews are your way to learn, but you can do a lot of that learning on the internet. You can maybe learn some inside stuff like personal experiences with firms, but really it's just about building relationships. And once you've built relationships, that can turn to jobs down the road because someone will do you a favor. And what's the favor? There are 300 applicants for this job. All I want is an interview. I'm not asking you for a job. I feel confident that I'm able to showcase my skills once I get an interview. And now the person on the other line thinks, wow, this kid went to my school. So I have this natural connection. I really liked her on the phone. I'm happy to help her. And all she's asking me to do is to tell human resources this person's worth an interview. I'm happy to do that. That's very little ask. I'm happy to extend myself that way. That's how it's done. So turn informational interviews into relationships, not asking for jobs. That's one of the mistakes people make. They're too transactional. Don't be. It's about building relationships.
Building relationship indeed. And Mr. What social media pitfalls could actually cost students job opportunities?
Oh, it's the same. We have a daughter who's preparing to go to college in a couple of years, and the same. We give the same advice that I would give anyone, a young person entering the market today. It's time to start thinking more like an adult about how you present yourself to the world online. So the whole idea, I will say this, I'm all for entertainment. I'm all for these kids having fun, but enough of the dancing on TikTok because you don't want employers to see that stuff, just like you don't want colleges to see it,
Yes.
right? You don't want to see them. You don't want to show your partying on the internet. You just want to think, what is this going to look like to the rest of the world, right? What would my grandmother think if she saw all this, or what my grandmother's boss think if she saw all of this? That's a maturity that we need to start asking of our young people. Like this never happened in previous generations. There wasn't someone recording everything we did. Now that there is, we need to be more careful about what shows up online. And you just need to focus more on strategic thinking. And we can help them because that's hard for young people to think really long term. We can help them by saying, this is not going to help you if people see this. And the universities have already said that's what they do. They look for you. And if you're an 18-year-old trying to get into university and all they see is you partying, why would they accept you when there's thousands of other applicants who are not doing that? It's the same in the workplace. What reputation are you bringing to our company? So that's where maturity pays off. Like, okay, I'm done with that. Done with all the social media fun silliness. I still encourage a social media presence. I actually post on Instagram and LinkedIn, but serious stuff, not silly stuff. I hope that helps.
Serious stuff. Yeah, serious stuff. And how can students stay motivated during a prolonged job search, Mr. Carter?
So that is the toughest thing of all. That gets back to how do you maintain that belief? And often when people finally come to me, it's because they've been looking for a while and their self esteem is really taking a hit. Especially when you see, I see this with new grads all the time. They see their classmates, their friends getting jobs and they're not getting one, right? And their parents are putting pressure on them. And it's very difficult to maintain that positive belief. So what I say is whatever it takes to help you get in a good place and remind yourself of all the good things in your life, that's what you need to do. For example, I had a post months ago, several months ago on LinkedIn. It was a short video talking about anyone looking for a job. It's really important to follow this advice. Look at your job search like a part time job, not a full time job. If you spend all of your time worried about your job search, looking for jobs, spending, getting pressure from whoever, the outside world, your parents, whoever it happens to be, or yourself, and you just never give yourself a break, you will get so completely burnt out and stressed out, you will be useless in your job search. So that's why I say think of it as a part time job. Think of it as a real job, though. At 9 o'clock, I'm going to be at my desk, showered, all cleaned up, bed made, like I'm going to work. And I'm going to sit down at my desk and I'm going to go through all these steps. The resume, you can deal with all that early, and I can look for new roles. I can be making more connections. I can engage on LinkedIn and spend. You get there at 9, go till 1 o'clock, focused entirely on your job search and building your skills. Whether that could be an AI course, for example, or a Microsoft Excel course. But at 1 o'clock, you're done. Then you go do fun things. You go for a run. You go out with friends. You get fresh air and clear your head, because no one can sustain that kind of pressure on themselves or from others, making it a full time thing. You need to have enough respect for yourself to say, I will only get a job if it's part of my life. If it takes over my life, it will fail.
Mr. Curtis, before we wrap up our discussion for today, I'm inviting you to please do listen to my other podcast, people, my other podcast, because my abstract essay is already in fifth season, abstract poetry in second season, and my book 101 review in fifth season too, comedy 101 in second season, and my food 101 in fifth season as well. Geography 101 in fourth season, and my baby podcast Law 101 and Mental Health 101, Love Letters in third season, and Movie 101 Review and Music 101 in fourth season, and Science 101 and Sex 101 in its first season. Please listen to them wherever you listen your podcasts. So, Mr. Curtis, what or yes, what is your number one piece of unconventional advice for beating the job search odds?
Another great question. Most people are afraid of interviewing because they feel they're in a vulnerable position. They feel they need something. And the person who's invited them in for an interview is in charge. And they look at it kind of like us and them. And my number one advice is be yourself. Be confident being yourself. Be confident knowing what you know and admitting what you don't know. The most mature answer you can give to a question that you have no idea how to answer is, wow, that's a really challenging question. I actually don't have a good answer for that. But I can promise you this, as soon as this interview is over, I'm going to look that up. Would you like me to send you my response? As
Mhm.
opposed to the typical response to a very challenging question that you hadn't thought of is, and you fumble through. And that doesn't work in the real world. In the real world, when somebody says, what's 9,042 times 71? You don't just guess. You say, I don't know. I need a calculator. The real world wants honesty and directness. So in
Yes.
interviewing, be yourself and be willing to not know everything and be humble enough to recognize that's okay.
Yes. It's okay, people. And be honest, be true yourself. Mr. Curtis Butler, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom to the world. So, can you please invite our listeners to support your business, your advocacy, or any projects that you're doing right now?
Sure thing. Thank you very much. So, um, I'm continuing to post as regularly as I can find time for. On Instagram, for example, you can find me at Curtis A. Butler on Instagram, or on LinkedIn, just Curtis Butler. And whether you're looking for a job in finance, which is really my historical specialty, or any field, I'd be happy to help train you on these things that can help you have more success. So thank you, Jamie.
Yes, people, let's support Mr. Curtis Butler because if you support him, for sure, more and more and more empowering students to come to have their, well, job. And Mr. Curtis, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much. Have a great one.
More to come, people. See you soon.